T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hello and welcome to the Bullpen. I am James Roy, and as always with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
My heart hurts, man. The Astros are done this season. It's been one of those seasons where nothing has went right, but they were finding ways to make it happen and just came up short. They ran into a white-hot Detroit Tigers team that literally did everything and anything to make the playoffs, and those are the most dangerous teams. And shout out to Detroit. Tip your cap to them. They just got it done. Obviously, I believe the Astros will be back, but you hate to see them go out this early.
Yeah, it felt like there was – it may have been my fault. I don't know. I was at Guitar Center the other day. I saw a Yankees fan, and he tried to talk smack to me. So I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to beat you on the ALCS." And maybe I got a little ahead of myself. Who knows? That's probably what it was. So I'll take full responsibility for the Astros not winning this series. It's my fault. I'll go ahead and take it. But I mean, it's probably particularly frustrating for you being there. But it brings up a point that I don't want to make because I don't want people to not want us to go to games. But every Texans and Astros game, well, not every Astros game, but every Texans game we've gone to, the Texans have lost since the bullpen started. And, you know, every playoff Astros game that one of us has gone to, the Astros have lost. So
actually, I was undefeated. I've been to 2 games this season, and I this jersey was undefeated. Like, I pulled out all the stops. I thought when they took the lead 2-1, go into that electric bullpen, that was what we needed to get going. I fully believe that they'd have made it to a game 3. It would have been very interesting because the advantage again would have been with the Astros as far as starting rotation. It just wasn't meant to be, man. Detroit was just so hungry. Every time you thought you could get them out, another guy that probably should have made a play.
Yeah, pretty much. And then some, I don't know, just an interesting progression of the game. I was actually putting my son down for a nap, and I put the phone down, and Presley had just given up the run on the wild pitch, and Hader had just gone into the game, and it was 2-2. And I went and it took me 5 minutes to put my son down for a nap. And in the time that it took me to put him down for a nap, the score changed to 5-2. And I was like, oh, that's not what you like to see. But, oh well. RIP to the Astros season. There's only one man that can save Houston sports now, and his name is CJ Stroud. Let's talk Texans football. Before we get into that, a couple housekeeping items. One, I haven't talked about it a lot throughout since I announced it, but some of you who have been following the bullpen for a minute may know my wife is very, very pregnant right now. And so that we do have a date for that. It is very soon. We're within our 48-hour window for that to happen. So if you listen regularly and you're listening to our preview for the Bills matchup, I'll probably be sitting in the hospital meeting my second son at that time. And with that, next week's episodes of the Bullpen will look a little different. I probably won't be the one on there. So just letting y'all know about that right up front. If you want to win a Texans jersey and don't mind maybe spending a little money, the Bullpen Locker League is doing a contest. And with this, I understand that a lot of people are maybe confused on the gameplay in the Locker app. It's a pretty new format. So I petitioned the app to do it this way because it sounded like a good idea. We had discussions. They brought it up. I said it sounded like a really good idea. But you just have to join the league and play one of the quarters in this week's game against the Bills, and then you will be entered in a drawing to win a Texans jersey. They're giving you $10 right up front, so instead of paying $25 to be in the league, it'd be $15. And then there's going to be more giveaways in the future, and there's going to be bigger prizes that will be given away based off who's the best at the game, who can get the highest score that week. So make sure you're in on the Locker League so that you can get in on that and have a shot at winning a jersey this weekend. So yeah, let's do it. Let's talk Texans. This is the Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast, and we talk Texans. That's what we do. So let's get right into it. This weekend, the Texans play the Bills. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that matchup, knowing what we know now? Because I feel like before the season started, I want to say this. If you had asked me, hey, in the first 5 weeks, 2 Stephon Diggs revenge games, what's your record and who do you beat, who do you not? If you'd asked me to guess, I might have said if I had to pick a loss, I'd have been like, oh yeah, beat the Vikings and maybe lose a close one to the Bills. We'll move on. So this would if the Texans can win this weekend, be quite literally the opposite of what I would have expected from that stretch of games. But I mean, how do you feel going into this week?
Surprisingly, I feel really good. I feel really good. I feel like this Texans team, although not as crisp as we would like them to be, obviously not running on all cylinders, still are finding ways to win football games. And while Buffalo has had some games where they've looked really good, I mean, they blew the doors off of Jacksonville. I mean, it was over before it began, basically. They did not look so good against Baltimore the following week. So for me, I kind of feel like, look, week to week, teams are a little different. Texans play some clean football. I totally believe they have every business beating the Buffalo Bills if things go their way.
And I think we're squarely in, I don't want to say in the middle. We're probably more closer to a Ravens team than the Jaguars, all things considered. But we're looking at those two matchups. We're like, okay, so we should be able to put up a fight as long as we play our game. I agree with you. And I'm gonna look to the chat. By the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but as always on these live editions, we would love your input to see what you have to say, because this is for y'all to talk some Texans football. And so if you want to spark up the conversation, if you got something to say, go ahead and pop into the chat and drop a question. But someone here said, if I had to pick one Texans or one Houston team to go to the playoffs each year, and if that's the rule, I'm kind of glad. Or to go deep in the playoffs, I'm kind of glad that it's, not the Astros, because I'd rather have the Texans. And I think that plays into the superstition side of it. I feel better about this matchup, simply put, because the Astros are no longer playing. And so that means that there's no Houston sports juju that's going their way. And the Rockets haven't started. So the only team that's left is the Dynamo. The Dynamo clinched the playoffs, and they're kind of in that lull spot. So nothing really to see there. They're playing New England tonight.
They're playing for home field advantage, sir. There is definitely not a low spot right now. The next couple of games are important.
I thought they were out of the top 4. I thought that they only clinched just the 6 seed.
It's like 2 points. They have everything to play for.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So there's still some juju to go that way. If the Dynamo don't clinch home field and the Texans do good, I could be happy with that. But I'd like to see them both do it. The point is that the Astros are not playing anymore. So now there's none of this. As much as people like to think there maybe aren't superstitious about sports, everyone's a little superstitious about sports. And like you said earlier, you're like, oh, this jersey was undefeated this season. I mean, I'm thinking like the Astros are done playing. Oh, the Texans are going to do pretty well. Like they gotta set up. They're set up for success.
So James, are you saying you're one of those people that believe that, the Astros have to walk so that the Texans can fly? Is it they can't fly together? One's got to be down so the other one can be up?
I want to believe that all things considered, that a sports city can have every team do really well. I mean, Boston and New England in general has shown that at points, but like if you're asking if I'm superstitious, like sometimes I like take into like you said earlier, like I'll take it to another. I shouldn't feel like my personal actions have as much of an impact on the Sunday matchup as I do, if that's what you're asking. There's like sometimes where I'm like, oh well, it's because I did this that the team didn't win, or like, or what was it? Where it hits me the most is this. I'll tell you this. There was one week earlier in the season where I was like, man, I need to make sure the Texans win, and I sat CJ Stroud in one of my fantasy leagues because I was like, if I play him, he's not going to have a good game, but if I sit him, he'll pop off, and I'm willing to take that hit, right? Every time, for all you fellow Texans fans out there, I'll bench CJ Stroud in every fantasy league every week if that means Texans win the Super Bowl. That's a promise I'll make to you. So as we get closer to that point, we'll see about that. But right now, like I'm not in any of my fantasy leagues. I'm not in a position where I can't play the other quarterback. Like I usually set myself up pretty well in that regard. Probably too well. I should probably be getting other talent instead of a backup quarterback, but oh well. But yeah, I mean, so how do you feel about in terms of this matchup? The biggest thing about it is Stephon Diggs going back home. Do you think that there's going to be some bad blood? Josh Allen made some comments about like, it's nice to have guys that don't care about stats. And it sounds very pointed, and it sounds like he is talking about a very specific person. Do you think that's going to create some bad blood? Do you think that that'll come up? How do you feel about that?
I honestly wonder what CJ Stroud plays in all this, right? Because ultimately, Stephon Diggs can want to do all the things. He can want to send this huge message to Josh Allen and to Buffalo and just ball out, right? But CJ has to be a willing partner in this crime. He has to go and basically say, I'm forcing this ball to Stephon Diggs. And I just wonder, how much he wants to do that. I do believe that he's aware of what's going on and where they are and how important it will be for Stephon to play well. I also believe that he's really trying to win a football game. And if that means spreading the ball out to 5, 6, 7 different guys, that's what he's going to do. Oh, by the way, there's this dude, Nico Collins. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's leading the league in receiving. And how do you not get that man the rock right now? Those are crimes against the Texans too. So my curiosity is about where CJ Stroud is between the ears as to it pertains to Stephon Diggs going back to Buffalo. Do I need to feed this guy to make him feel like, hey, you were right? Or am I just trying to win a football game?
I feel like it's all coming together with Tank Dell off the field. And so my biggest concern going into this game is the fact that Tank Dell is coming back, because it felt like, so to look at it, right, you brought up Nico Collins, and we can talk about that in a minute. We got a question in the chat I want to get to, but when you talk about Nico Collins and Tank Dell, Nico Collins is on pace for over 2,000 yards this season. The next closest player right now is Stephon Diggs. He's on pace for 990, almost 1,000. And with that, like, I think that I'm more concerned for Tank Dell with Tank Dell coming back, because Tank Dell's going to have to find his way to carve out his niche production. And I think what it looks like is what it looked like in week 1. Tank Dell gets like 3 or 4 receptions, but if you watch the game, then you know that Tank Dell's receptions were vital to what the Texans did in that game. His little 20-yard pop and a little, 3 and 4 yards here and there is like fine, because that's what we don't need Tank Dell to be the outside take it all guy. He can be, and there will be a game this season. I'm fully certain that there will be a game where Tank Dell takes over, but a successful game for him could be as simple as a nice little 20-yard reception here and there, and just kind of getting open and being available. But Stephon Diggs, on the other hand, is the ball's coming my way, I'm going to catch it. Because if you look at it, regardless, it's not like a problem, right? I'm not bringing this up as a problem, but Stephon Diggs, I believe, has not. I don't know if he has dropped a target that's thrown to him. Every game that I can recall looking at the stat sheet, he catches every ball that comes his way. So that's his purpose. Whereas Nico Collins, I think, had like 14 targets and 12 catches in the last game, and then the other game, granted, there was those 4 in a row targets from Davis Mills in the in the garbage time, but it was like 10 targets for 4 receptions or something like that. He's going to get a lot of target share. He may not catch all of it, but he will make a difference with what he's given. So, I mean, I feel good about Stephon Diggs going to that game. I think that if anything, if you need some material to put up in the locker room to get him going, like, yeah, the Bills are given that. Like, they have Josh Allen. I put that quote right in front of Stephon Diggs' locker every day. You're like, hey, so you're just a stat guy, right? Is that what you are to us? You're not doing a very good job at being a stat guy if that's what you're looking to be. So I don't know. But in the chat, we have a comment from Twitter. Do you think Christian Harris and Danico Autry could potentially unlock a next level for our defense? Take them from goodish to great. I truly think Harris is a Pro Bowl talent. Tom, I'll let you take that one first. What do you got?
Josh, I appreciate the question. I totally agree with you that there is another level that this defense can go to. Do I think it's more about Christian Harris and Danico Autry? I don't know. I really wonder if they're going to be a bigger point of focus in the pass rush. I was listening to Johnny Harris, the sideline reporter for the Texans, on my way back home from the Astros game, and he spoke to his 2 guys that need to be the guys for the Texans as Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. He believes that in order for you to do something, great with Josh Allen, you've got to be able to contain him. So do I feel like now you add Christian Harris and Danico Autry to that? Can there be another level? Absolutely. I just wonder how long that's going to take, and when are we okay going, okay, when does this start? When can we say, hey, they're good, or no, it didn't work? I mean, I think the defense can be really good as constructed. Those guys are just only going to make it better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just speaks to the Josh Allen thing. I mean, I think that the defensive strategy will probably look a lot like it did against the Colts week 1. And so anyone looking for those sack numbers to just spike in this game, like, I don't know if that's really what you're trying to do with Josh Allen. Obviously, you're trying to put him in the dirt, but like, you're trying to make sure he doesn't get out and get those big chunk plays on the ground, really. And so, I mean, the Texans in the past have shown with Anthony Richardson, with Lamar Jackson, that they can hold these guys to limited rushing duty and cover them in the air. It's just a matter of showing up and doing it this time. And to speak to Christian Harris and Danico Autry, my biggest thing is that I haven't felt like the linebacker play has been that like subpar in any way. There's a reason that Henry To'oTo'o and Azeez Al-Shaair are getting 100% of the snap share, right? Like D'Amico likes what he sees, and they're playing every snap at linebacker. If anything, him coming back maybe takes a little bit of load off of Jalen Petrie. Lets Jalen Petrie play more in coverage, but I mean, Jalen Petrie's strongest suit right now is playing not in coverage. So, his return sure will keep the linebackers fresher, but I don't think it affects the scheme as much. And it's not to say that I wouldn't like to have him back, but if there's some players that haven't played the past couple weeks that are important to come back, him and then Danico Autry, I feel like when the pass rush is there, and when Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are doing their job, the guys that we have right now have been doing a good job at what Danico Autry's meant to do, which is third down pass rusher interior. So I'm more interested to see what he brings on the outside as a rusher, to see if that could maybe spark something based off of, like, I don't think the pass rush has been awful, but maybe he brings a change of pace that can improve the pass rush. But out of the two, Danico Autry is the guy I'm probably more interested to see back in terms of his impact on the team. And that, once again, that's not to say that I don't like what Christian Harris can do. I just think that the linebacker room is not crying out for help right now. At least not yet. Not to the level that I think both Tom and I thought it would at this point. So that is what I'll say about that. Let's see. Allen will not be 100%. He's hurt. We've got that from the Instagram chat. Have you heard anything about that? I thought maybe he injured his hand or something. I don't know.
I don't think it's going to be anything that I'm going to read into. If he's got a minor ding or something like that, I think he's still going to play and be very effective. Obviously, if that changes later on in the week where he doesn't practice or something like that, I imagine he'll be a full go, and they're gonna have to treat him like he's 100%.
Yeah, I could feel that. Let's see. Said no, I don't think it's serious. I mean, is he on the Bills injury report? I don't look at the Bills injury report regularly, so if he was that injured, the national media. I have, and for those who don't understand the inner workings of my ability to know things about football, I have like one or two international sources, or not international, but national like football sources that I have set on my Twitter notifications. Speaking of, Houston Stressens just tweeted. He just retweeted our stream. Oh wow. And I have him on my notifications, but oh hey, got room for one more?
Hey, come on down, baby.
Let me get the link to the chat to you. First, let me turn it over to Tom though. But Tom, I wanted to talk more about Nico Collins and the season that he's having, but
we will. But first, Josh Allen is on the injury report with a left hand injury, but he was a full participant in practice on Wednesday. I would imagine it would take a lot for him not to play or to be limited in any way. People that did not practice, though, Deion Dawkins, tackle, Austin Johnson, a D tackle, Khalil Shakir, which is probably more important, which I want to talk about a little later. He didn't practice with an ankle injury, so stuff to monitor on that front. Again, listening to the midweek thing that Johnny Harris does, he was talking about what the cornerbacks would look like and where they would go and what they would do. Really interesting that he brought up how you saw a shadow finally of a wide receiver from Derek Stingley Jr. when Kamari Lassiter was struggling mightily with Brian Thomas Jr. So they were trying to identify where they thought that person could be in a Bills offense that lacks a true number one. Maybe Shakir would be that guy, or maybe Dalton Kincaid. So just interesting stuff.
No, yeah. And speaking, so one of the things that ties us back into the Nico discussion, though, is I saw a graphic. I believe Houston Stressens posted it. He's here. We'll bring him up. Hey, Garrett, what's up? How's it going?
What's good? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
we got you, sir.
We got you. Surprise guest on the bullpen.
Yeah, I was supposed to do the AFC South roundtable with Ruben and Harley and AD, and Ruben is not responding. So
you decided to hop on.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way my schedule is with two little girls, I have like one day in the week to do my show, so I'm trying to maximize my time, trying to talk ball.
Gotta get that ball in. I'm pretty sure that you were the one who posted this graphic I'm about to reference, but I could be wrong. It could have been another account, but the EPA per quarterback wide receiver duos, CJ and Nico is number one, but number two is Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir. Mm-hmm. So I think it's gonna be pretty important to lock down Shakir. Do you have anything to say to that statistic, or like how Josh Allen and them are gonna look this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, so I've like argued with other Josh Allen and Bills fans. Like, there's been this natural conflict with the Stephon Diggs. It's become like this mudslinging contest. But I've said that I thought he's overrated, but like I feel like it's being taken out of context. He's been like barked up to be like top 1-2 quarterback. I think he's more of like a 4 or 5. But with Joe Brady changing the offense, he's kind of harnessed the good for Josh Allen. He's before, when Josh Allen was being asked to do too much and trying to be superhero, that's when you see the bad, where he's like a modern day Brett Favre, honestly, where he could throw a 60-yard bomb or he could throw a pick or a fumble at any given time. So what Joe Brady's done is, first and foremost, is the run game. He's got the run game going, and I feel like that's really unlocked it for them. And then after that, it's short to intermediate passing. That's through tight ends with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. But most importantly, Khalil Shakir. And he's someone who last year I thought was very underrated. And if you go like on, Next Gen Stats and look at all the stats from last year, Khalil Shakir on every metric you pull up is like top 5. Like, he's a super underrated receiver. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me that they're number 2. But not to get too much into it, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. And so for me, that's the big key on defense. I would say run game first, and then Shakir second, as far as what we need to hone in on.
Oh no, I got hit with the no Diddy on the Instagram chat when I told you got to get that ball in. Sorry, no Diddy.
I'm not gonna lie, it kind of crossed my mind to say that. So
should have popped in and said it. Good looking out. Good looking out. I'm glad that you brought up Josh Allen and where he's ranked at, because I feel like that's an early season thing. I feel like CJ is kind of lurking, and a lot of other quarterbacks are kind of sitting in the wings, like playing good ball. And Josh Allen's just had a really good start to the season, and I'm interested to see if he can carry that out. But Tom, did you have anything to say to the Khalil Shakir, the Bills discussion there?
I definitely feel he's somebody that they have to pay attention to as far as what they're going to do in the cornerback room, where if they're actually going to shadow him or not. I mean, really, if it's my defense, I take him away, and then okay, Josh Allen, beat us with whoever else you want to.
The power of friendship.
I definitely don't want to sit here and go, okay, we're just gonna put Derek Sling Jr. on one side of the field, and whoever's over there, that's who he's matched up against. I'd rather him just shadow their best wide receiver and take him off the board.
100%.
Yes.
And I agree with you on that.
Well, that's if y'all watched the Ravens Monday night game, I'm pretty sure Marlon Humphrey shadowed Shakir and had pretty good success in doing so. I guess, but the thing is he's a nickel slot corner, so I don't know if we'd be willing to put Stingley at slot, and then now you're forced to put someone else on the outside. So, and we've seen D'Amico and what he's done is, during the regular season, he shown that he is not a big fan of shadowing guys, but I guess in the playoffs he changes his mind. So I don't know how we'll approach it, but we got to do something.
I would hope so. And in our discussion, so Tom and I on our recap of the Jags game, I went so far as to say, so when you look at the top 3 issues with the Texans right now, I think most would agree that the penalties, pre-snap penalties, are huge. I would argue that's the most major issue by a large margin. I would say that if that can be fixed, the Texans are instantly looking like a Super Bowl contender again. No doubt in my mind. The O-line skill issue is a thing. I think that if they play serviceable, they don't have to be great. They just have to be okay, and I'm okay with that. But a lot of people would put Bobby Slowick's play calling in that third slot. And to me personally, I think that the inability to adapt the defensive scheme has at times come back to bite us more than Bobby Slowick's play calling ever has this season, at least. How do you feel about that?
I agree with all that. And, the play calling wouldn't be an issue if those first 2 things were resolved that you mentioned, penalties and O-line. I mean, you go back and watch the tape, and he's pretty innovative. Like, I did for the first time this season in that Jags game. I've been defending Slowick and saying it's not really his fault. There were concerns last year, but I feel like people were taking concerns from last year and putting them onto this year, and they weren't the same thing. So obviously last year, the first down runs were an issue. And then obviously red zone, but up until this Jags game, neither one of those were an issue. And really, honestly, the only thing that started to be an issue somewhat in that game was the first down runs in the second half of the Jags game. But yeah, I would agree that's on the bottom of the list, and I would agree that I would put the defensive scheme above that. And it's tough. I mean, I don't know if it's D'Amico just has pride in his scheme, and you can tell like when he talks in his press conferences too. I believe it was on Coffee with Coach with Vandermeer and John Harris after the Vikings game. He basically mentioned I put the players in the right position to make the play, and they didn't make the play. He basically put it on them. Is kind of what it sounded like. So he still has faith in that scheme. But it was crazy to me last year how he was under fire in that Browns game with Amari Cooper, who went off against us, and he was asked why you don't shadow. I was like, oh, we don't do that. And then we play him again 3 weeks later in the playoffs, and he shadows him. It's like, what the
He's just learning from us. He's just getting those questions, and then he's like, oh, that's what I was saying. Speaking of learning from, you mentioned those words from D'Amico. I think that's what Doug Peterson was watching before he went into his press conference after the game against the Texans, because he threw the players under the bus, ran them over, backed it up, and said, but I can take it, and I'm not going to run the players over with the bus.
Put it on me.
It's just put it on me, even though I just put it all on the players, and then now I'm trying to back. I'm like, don't backtrack. It's one.
That's a man fighting for his job, though, man. I mean, He's 0-4. He's like, I mean, you look at you could see in the game live in the stadium, and then you watch the film. Trevor Lawrence was terrible. I mean, like, you know, everyone, like they had their issues across the board, but like if Trevor Lawrence makes 2 of like 6 or 7 throws that are wide open, that game is completely different. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't blame him.
I agree with you. He's handcuffed to a massive cement block, and he's getting pushed off the plank. You have to see if he can swim. A massive $275 million cement block. That's a lot of money to have invested in a cement block. How many times can I say?
Hey, I don't
cement
mean
block?
to interrupt. I gotta address it. I'm sure y'all addressed it, but how we feeling about the Stros, man? That was a tough one,
dude. We did a little mourning at the beginning of the episode. Tom was there. I'll let Tom do a little bit of talking on that.
I mean, I wore the 2017 World Series jersey. I tried to do all the conjuring, all the magic that I could possibly do to get the Stros a win today. It was not enough. There's going to be some interesting offseason questions. Obviously, this team, for me, I think achieved enough given the state of the team and how banged up they were throughout the season. You know, you had different guys pitch in. I mean, most people don't remember Jose Abreu was playing first base because it's been so long. I mean, Presley, this thing where he's good and then he's not good. They just had to deal with a lot. And this Detroit Tigers team, you got to tip your cap to them. That was probably the hottest team in baseball going into the postseason. They won some gritty games where they had to do something to beat Houston. I mean, it wasn't like it was just given to them. Credit to AJ Hinch just being that dude. It was interesting. I read, you know, after the game, after they took their team picture, you know, Jim Crane went out there, shook his hand, which I think takes a lot considering he fired that man. So, you know, I'm looking
still hate that decision to this day.
100%.
To this day.
If you want to get the GM,
our hand was forced, man. That was complete BS.
Yeah. I mean, the Red Sox let Cora sit for a year and brought him back. I don't know why we couldn't have done this, right? Yeah,
I guess maybe not. I mean, yeah, I don't know, maybe not, but yeah, that stings.
So,
yeah, it does.
So, like Zach says, the big question now is Breggs coming back? If you read between the lines for me, I really feel like he's been trying to say goodbye for a long time now. And then he did it on Twitter. He went and tweeted goodbye, Houston, or thank you, Houston. And I don't know why you do that if, you know.
I think that in context, that's like a thank you for the season. He can spin it as his goodbye later on if he leaves, but I think that, and maybe it's wishful thinking from Altuve, but I don't think Altuve would go to the media with it like, hey, Bregman's, I bet we're doing all we can to get him back because he's super vital to this team. And so I don't think Altuve would go to the media like that, but I reckon you think different because you got your finger up like you got a thought.
One thing I'll say about Altuve and his comments, which I think actually speak really highly about what the situation is. You never saw him do this with Springer. You never saw him do this with Cole. You never saw him do this with Correa. He wanted him back, but he never said, this is a cornerstone. He needs to retire.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to the owner. Like, these are things you've never seen from Jose Altuve. So for me, if you're a fan of Alex Bregman being a Stro for the rest of his life, that's probably the most encouraging thing you could hear because the body language, all the optics, the tea leaves from Alex Bregman makes you think he's out the door. It's the only one that's really talking like, hey, this isn't happening is Jose Altuve, which that's the face of your franchise. So that means it has to mean something to me.
He almost sounded like a fan in his post-game press conference. He's like, I don't even want to entertain the idea of him not being like, he's like, nope, not even going to entertain it. But yeah, I mean, I think he understands like how much Bregman means to this program and the success we've had, not just from his play, but like the culture. Like he is, like you mentioned, a cornerstone. And I think Altuve gets that. So, you know, if that means overpaying him, then I say do it. It's kind of funny, you know, he's always a slow starter to start the year, but you know, as far as you know, like being the glue to the team, like he if we lost him, that would be a massive hit just from not even his play, just, you know, chemistry and cohesiveness and all that stuff.
I got to ask you guys this one question because I've been talking about it since the end of the game, and I'm curious what y'all's answer is. Tucker and Framber Valdez are going to be free agents in 2 years. If you can only keep 2 of the 3, Breggs, Framber, Tucker, who you keeping?
That's easy for me. We got so much pitching, man. I mean, go ahead, Framber.
Yeah,
like I love you, but you're a roller coaster. But like we have like 10 starting pitchers, 5 are on the IL. You know,
I have to agree with that sentiment. I think that, and especially with Fromber's recent playoff woes, that kind of, I don't want to say cost us. I mean, the bats have to wake up at some point. So it's not all on Fromber. But I do feel like Tucker and Bregman, while at points have been kind of inconsistent, are at their best elite hitters, and in Bregman's case, one of the best, if not the best, defensive third baseman in the league. So I have trouble thinking that. I don't think Bryce Matthews comes out of AAA and replaces what Bregman is. That's just like plain and simple. And Pena hasn't come out and replaced Correa. The Astros are still looking for a center fielder. There's only so many times you can let someone walk and hope that the farm system can replace them before the team is literally not a contender anymore. And we're towing that line. So I think that.
Well, what's the alternative for Tucker? Like, if we don't re-sign him, like, I get, like, I'm just as frustrated as the next fan is playoff struggles, but like, we're talking about 2 games, bro. Like, out of like 162, and obviously he struggled last year, but again, it's a small sample size. And yeah, I guess you can make the argument like when the lights are brighter, but like, you really don't know that. Like, I mean, George Springer is a case in point where that one, you know, in the 17 when he had like the worst playoffs, and then in the World Series was like basically our MVP. So it's like, you got to kind of look at the whole picture, man. And then also you factor in what he's done in the regular season allowed us to even get to the playoffs. If you don't re-sign him and just take a gamble, we saw what it was in the outfield this year. We were trying to find any bats to fill that center field role. I mean, you don't just because he had, you know, a small sample size of bad games in the playoffs, I don't think you just don't re-sign him because of that.
Well,
and
yeah,
see, for me,
you keep Tucker 100%.
See, for me, the answer is not easy at all, because if you look at them, they all have their warts. With Bregman, you know, the first 2 months of the season, expect nothing.
Yeah.
He's not even showing up till June. With Tucker, maybe you get postseason success. So far, the last 2 or 3 seasons, you've got nothing. And Fromber, for as good as he is, for huge chunks of the season, he has points where, you know, his head gets in the way. And then the last 2 postseasons, he's been really bad. But then you turn around and go, how many ace-type left-handers that are in their 20s that are out there that you can go get? It just doesn't grow on trees. So for what you have to do to, like, manage him, yeah, that's a struggle. But what you could potentially get is a top 5 pitcher in the league.
Yeah.
Tough.
I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I do feel like that, like, for me personally, what you look at is that the Astros already need to add a bat in the outfield with Tucker there. So if you let Tucker walk, you now need 2 bats in the outfield. So I don't see how you let him walk. And then defensively, I don't think you can replace Bregman. Pitching wise, the Astros at the deadline picked up, you know, Kikuchi. And he was like, I think the pitching, whenever it suffered injuries, was the position group that was the most resilient. So I think that the pitching coaching staff obviously has something going for them that leads me to believe that they can work it out. The bullpen, I mean, if you gave me a bullpen pitcher, that was like the only one that is serviceable in this staff, and it made me that would be a harder choice for me. But is there a serviceable bullpen pitcher on the Astros staff as it stands? I mean, it feels like the bullpen was supposed to be lethal, and that's like what lost us the game. I mean, plain and simple.
What we saw in this 2-game series is what we saw all season. I mean, there was, you know, hitting was hot and cold and couldn't, you know, hit with runners in scoring position. Most importantly, with runners on third, less than 2 out, like, we never converted. It's supposed to be like a 70% conversion rate. We like never do it. You know, Fromber was a roller coaster. It's the same thing with them. And then Presley and Hader, like, they end up having decent numbers at the end of the year, but they were a wild up and down, and it was the same thing. And Altuve's defensive, like, everything we saw all year was like, it was a big microcosm. It's an oxymoron. It was a microcosm of those 2 games of what we saw. But I will say the argument too about not keeping Fromber is like the development of Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, and Spencer Arrighetti makes that easier to go. I know there's the left-handed element to it, but just the fact that we have 3 guys that we weren't expecting much from become, you know, number 1 material is potentially is, you know, a big deal in that.
I would say Hunter Brown turning it around after that rough start to the season was a vital piece of the Astros even having a shot at the playoffs. So I'm interested to see how he starts this next season as well. But we had a question in the chat about the Texans, so I'm going to ask it to y'all. Someone's asking, so Matt Burke is the defensive coordinator. We all know that D'Amico calls the plays, is a defensive-minded head coach. Is there any blame to be held by the defensive coordinator with the way that the staff is structured?
I feel like that's really hard to do that when you know where the call's coming from. I mean, don't get me wrong, Matt Burke will get fired if something drastic happens and the defense is bad. But for all intents and purposes, he's a placeholder for D'Amico Ryans. So in public perception, I would think most people know that and are going to place the blame where it belongs. If you want to look at just, an org chart and go up, Matt Burke, it's kind of like this, the offensive line has struggled recently and everybody wants, who's the offensive line coach? And it's like, you could say that, but in nobody's going to care because they're so high paid and they're so highly thought of that it's like, well, what is that offensive line coach really going to do in the grand scheme of things to make Laramie Tunsil not false start? He can't fix that. Like, I don't care what you say. So yeah, he might lose his job, but should he, or should it be on Laramie?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't feel like they haven't really addressed that, like, I don't know who technically calls the plays, but obviously, like, I agree with you, Tom. I mean, D'Amico is a defensive-minded head coach. You would imagine it's his defense, whether he's specifically calling the plays or not. You would imagine that he has influence on the game plan prior to the game. So, I think, like, I agree with what Tom said.
Unless something's changed early in the offseason after the hire, D'Amico clarified that he would be calling the plays defensively. So it's my understanding that is still the case. And with that in mind, I mean, I don't know, firing the defensive coordinator for the defense being bad when you call the plays is not the first step I would expect to see. There's been points in Texans history where when we had offensive coaches where they wouldn't hire an offensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden it's just their fault. Whereas in a certain instance, I believe that at points Bill O'Brien may have done this, where he had an offensive coordinator and I can't remember his name, but it was up and down with that guy. He went to the Titans after. But he at one point turned over play calling duties to the offensive coordinator, because that's like, if you don't hire a coordinator for yourself when things get bad, you don't have that step to take that lets people feel good about things. Like D'Amico, if the defense really and truly becomes the problem, because to clarify, as much as the defensive scheming sucks, like the defense only performs poorly because the offense is not producing late in games and it's forcing the defense to play a lot. That's the root cause of that. But if it got to the point where there was a loss of confidence in D'Amico's ability to call plays, firing the defensive coordinator, I think you just as soon rather hand him the play calling duties and see if that change of pace maybe helps the defense function better. Maybe he's seeing something that you're not, and he'll make the call. Maybe he'll shadow the wide receiver one on the other team with Derek Stingley. Who knows? But I don't know. Tim Kelly, that was the offensive coordinator. I remember that roller coaster. Which Texans head coach just didn't hire? No, that was Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith was at defensive minded. He didn't hire a defensive coordinator. So then when things went sideways, he couldn't pawn off defensive play calling duties on someone else because he was the defensive coordinator. He was the head coach / coordinator. So what a wild year that was. What a wild 3 years that was.
You think you'd at least have someone in place just to help delegate stuff too, so you can be the overall manager, But then your point too, just to be able to blame, to pass the blame.
Yeah, I mean, and Tom makes a point, right? We kind of talked about it on our recap where there's a point where the coach can only do so much. The players have to be able to do it on the field. Like with Laramie Tunsil and his issues with false starts, that's a Laramie Tunsil thing, and there's only so much that the head coach in the NFL can do. Some head coaches have gone too far with it, and they had to go away from the NFL for a while. Looking at you, Jim Harbaugh. And so these guys make millions of dollars. They don't really have to perform well once they have the check. So like, what's motivating them? They have to motivate themselves. And so maybe getting a bigger paycheck is what motivates them. I don't know, but you can't publicly say that. As the coach, it ends with you. And D'Amico, I have respected a lot so far, never passes the blame to anyone else outside of the post game or what you brought up with the coffee and coach after Minnesota. It seemed like he kind of said what you really shouldn't say out loud, which is that it does fall on the players at some point. Like that's just an inevitable fact.
And he didn't do it like in a way where he was undermining anybody, but I think he did it in a good way. And he also, I think in that same interview too, pointed out how bad the interior defensive line played. So, I mean, I think it's good to kind of point those things out. And I don't think he's like doing that to send a message. He's just, being honest. But I don't mean to like interject with like the whole, I'm sure you got like a script or a schedule, but if y'all want to talk about, there's a topic while we're on it with D'Amico with the penalties. I kind of got an opinion on that. I don't know if y'all have addressed that or not, just like the way he's been handling it or.
Yeah, you got it. How do you want to talk about it? Let's do it.
Yeah. So I think like, I'm kind of like, you think you see these penalties, they're self-inflicting, obviously week one, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's been basically 3 weeks in a row now, right? It's been Chicago, Minnesota, and now Jacksonville. And, the first week it's okay. It's early. Second week, okay. It was a loud environment. And then now the third week in a row against Jacksonville, you're like, all right, this is ridiculous. Like you've had plenty of time to do it. And like you said, a number of these penalties are on the players. Like you can only do so much, but at a certain point, like you can't just allow it to keep happening. And so like I'm trying to like figure out why. And so I kind of have a theory that this is the downside of having a players coach. Like D'Amico, is too nice to the players. And like, it seems to me on the outside, like his approach is like, you're a pro, I'm gonna let you figure it out. Like, you don't need me to tell you, like, LT, you're an all pro, you're getting paid millions of dollars. I don't need to tell you not to commit these penalties. But it's like, maybe at a certain point you have to be the bad guy. But I mean, I would rather him be more patient with it than to overreact initially and risk kind of messing up the locker room or having someone like LT check out, which is sad to say, but so I don't know what y'all's thoughts are on that. If you think the player coach dynamic is partly the fault, is kind of the issue with this.
I don't know, Tom, what do you got to say about it?
I mean, for me, it's 100% what you're talking to. Like him being a player's coach, him being a former player, I think he has this mindset of, okay, I'm going to talk to you, but I'm not going to talk at you. I'm really not going to degrade you. I'm not really going to put you out in the media. We're just going to work through it and hope that, okay, you're a professional, you're a good player, you're going to figure it out. The problem is that when you get a guy like Laramie Tunsil, like at what point do you go enough is enough? You really can't. You're committed to this dude because he's your foundational left tackle, all pro. He's got all these stats that back up that he's one of the best left tackles in the league. So it's really difficult, I think, for him to talk to it or, discipline him the way that, other coaches would where, all right, now you're not seeing the field. Perfect example, Steven Sims muffs a punt off the field. Steven Sims throws a chicken wing, gets a flag off the field. And it's like, there you can do that. When it's Laramie Tunsil, you just got to kind of like, well,
Sucks.
Illegal formation. What can I do? False start. What can I do? And these are things that are like easily correctable within himself. Like, I don't even think you need to coach to that. It's like, hey, I need you to line right here. He should, how long has he been playing football? He should not have to tell him where to line up. The false start stuff, hold your water. I mean, it seems simple from the way I'm talking at it, but I feel like he coaches that way too, where it's just like, what do you want me to tell him? Or how do you want me to like, in the end, I can say, hey man, I need you to be better. And that's about as far as he can go.
I mean, I agree to a point. And the reason I referenced Jim Harbaugh earlier is that it felt like his trajectory was at Stanford, pre-NIL, like, hey, the way that he is with Justin Herbert right now, like that's indicative of how he's always been. He's like a rah-rah, hey, you got to get right. Like he's the kind who'd probably get up in your face. Like if Laramie Tunsil was on the Chargers, he'd hate everything because Jim Harbaugh would be in his face about every single mistake. It'd be a thing all the time until it was fixed. But to that extent, his trajectory in San Francisco was, wow, he's really drawn a lot out of these players. Wow, they made a Super Bowl. They're doing really good. And then all of a sudden there's like a point where it's like you push a little too far. And it's like these players think to themselves, I'm making millions right now. And I do not, I don't know, we're all men here, right? There's a certain amount of disrespect you can take, perceived or actual, that where you get to a point where and especially if you're a millionaire, I'm being paid millions to do this and I'm being talked to that way. Yeah, I don't have to be talked to that way. Okay, that's cool. I see where you're at. This team's not gonna be good anymore because I'm not gonna put up with that. And so the tough part about critiquing where D'Amico is with this for me is that sure you could say that maybe he's a little too far on the other end of the spectrum from Jim Harbaugh, but I think there's a point where you push up to and get close to what Jim Harbaugh is to get like good coaching. And I think there's certainly a lot of good points made there, but I like where D'Amico's at right now as a coach. I don't want him to be there next year. I think that as he progresses as a coach and as he gets better, he'll find the right level and the right ways to push these players. But I think with as good as the Texans did last year, a lot of people forget he's a second-year head coach that it looks like he could still be playing football. Like, I don't know, not a lot of coaches that look like they could still be playing football coach really, really great football early on. So I'm thankful for what we got out of him. And I think that he has shown this season so far that he's already developed past the point of where he was last year. Like, I'm seeing the progress. And so I agree with you that it's kind of an issue right now, but I think that I can see him progressing. That is what I will say to that.
Well, I like the way he's done it, but like, let's just say it happens again next week. Then like he reaches that boiling point where he has to do it. But I agree, like the approach, like, because this is a delicate situation. Like, you got these highly paid athletes making hand over fist more than you. And you have to kind of, like, it's sad, like the nature of the relationship is you kind of have to be delicate with how you handle these things, especially someone like LT. You don't want to come in there and start cursing him out and then he'll just check out and now you're kind of like screwed. Like, he's already shown like where effort and focus is an issue, and then you can completely have him shut down. So giving him the longer leash, it's still early in the year. We're 3-1. It's not like if we were 0-4, then yeah, okay, it's different. But so yeah, I would rather my coach kind of be more on this side of it than, like you mentioned, the Harbaugh side where he's the asshole and the players don't respect him. But I also too like want to point out this is tough for D'Amico because LT is a player who's, you know, the left tackle is, you know, one of the most coveted positions to protect your quarterback's blind side, and he's an elite pass protector. So I mean, there's still that regardless of all these penalties. Whether the penalties maybe help him with that or not is a different conversation. But it is funny how you assume this player and he is against the very type of player you're preaching about building your team around. But so he's got to have this weird like internal struggle about it himself. Like, he is not like the team. I mean, I don't know if you can't say he's a team player, but some of the stuff he does seems to be selfish. I mean, like the effort stuff seems to be lazy and selfish. Like, it's kind of the opposite of what D'Amico wants. You know, he wants players like Petrie or Ward or whoever else that are just 100 miles per hour, like for the team, max effort. And then you got this going on. So I can't imagine what it's like to handle that.
Well, and D'Amico's not saying, look at Laramie. He's saying, look at Will, follow Will. Because Will Anderson's the player that is the kind of player he wants in his room. And to speak to that, like Tom and I had discussions about that. But one point I'll make is that the Laramie Tunsil is a team captain, and that is not D'Amico Ryan's decision. That is the player's decision. So as much as we talk about Laramie Tunsil not being what you would think would be the kind of player that D'Amico Ryans wants leading his team, the other players in the locker room view him as a leader. So is that a shortcoming in terms of the other players' ability to read what a leader is? Is that a failure at a cultural level? Is Laramie Tunsil just like a different person in the locker room than he is outwardly from what we can see? Are we not getting the whole story? Like, I don't know. Like, I'd like to get your take on that. Like, do you think that the players just aren't very good at picking team captains? Like, what's up with that?
Go ahead.
No, yeah, you're good, Tom. Sorry, go ahead.
I really think that when it comes to a team captain like that, I think some of that is seniority. Obviously, you got a lot of young guys in that room. LT being around the league for as long as he is, I really think a lot of those guys look up to him as a big brother type. I mean, you hear them say so much in some of the post-game stuff. So I think that naturally gives you that, well, LT should be our captain. And I don't think, like, if you ask somebody preseason week 2, who's a captain, and now who's a captain, those could be totally different conversations. I think, you get the C before the season starts and then you just roll with it. I think after all these penalties, if you could strip the C, they probably would, because it's just like, it's killing them. I love Curtis's idea with the bonuses. I just don't think any player would ever agree to that. I mean, if you could get somebody to go, hey, we'll make this we'll give you this money right now if you just hold your water.
Do you have to get the player to? Is that one of those things that you do? Because I know there's some things where you can just convert the contract without talking to the player. But that gets into something of like, even if you can do it without talking to the player, is that a good practice to enforce in terms of like cultural and morale things going on? Like, am I gonna sign a contract with this team and then without any sort of talks get my contract terms changed because they can do it? And so I that's where I'm coming
like the
from with that.
reverse of incentive is like decentives, and I can't imagine any scenario where any player or any agent's going to sign up for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and one of the reasons, right? So to be fair, against the Jaguars, against the Vikings, the reason the issue with Laramie Tunsil was not that he committed penalties, it was that he committed so many. And as a team this season, the Texans have averaged 10 penalties a game, and Laramie Tunsil's been a big part of that. But I will take a false start from Laramie Tunsil every game for what he is as a left tackle. And the reason that he commits those false starts is because he is so in tune with the snap, and he is trying to get every advantage he can to protect CJ Stroud. And I admire that part of it. I respect it. So the issue is the excessiveness of the penalties. So I think that converting his salary into bonuses for no false starts is just, I don't know. You're de-incentivizing him from doing everything he can to protect CJ Stroud. Like I said, a false start, sure, move the team back 5 yards. I know that Laramie Tunsil on every single snap is trying to get off as soon as he can, no diddy, in order to protect CJ Stroud. So
I agree, and I've been like, I've been the one like defending him on that, and like, but lately it's been like indefensible. But it does like make you think now, like, I guess you can consider, getting that fault, like that early jump, which sometimes you get false starts, quote unquote, cheating, or him lining up 2 yards behind the center or whatever it is, like quote unquote cheating. So it makes you wonder now, like, how much of these things that he's doing makes him as good as what he is. And then also throw in the holding penalties too. Like, okay, you get beat, I'm just going to hold him. You're not going to sack him. Like, so you start to think like, okay, like he's elite, but like how much do these 3 different little cheating techniques factor into it? But I mean, end of the day, you still take it. But I wish there was a way to like still have the trade-off. Cause I mean, a 10-yard hold is basically giving up a sack. I mean, it's
I think
drive
holding
killer.
is an excessive penalty already. 10 yards for a hold. It has always been a debilitating penalty for what it is, in my opinion.
It's been drive killers. And then, I mean, and the big, like the false starts really don't bother me unless you have like 4 or 5 a game. But it was the illegal formation penalties are the killer because the play still proceeds and we still convert the first down. And it's like it's a total momentum, like deflationary. Like you get the first down. Oh, we converted 3rd and 15. Oh, no, LT was a yard too far back. You're like, oh, shit.
Tom had a good thought on that. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. You want to tell him about your idea with the like how wide receivers line up, right?
So I think that if this is where officiating is going to go, and they're going to drive this whole, okay, you need to be lined up accurately every play, and they're going to call a left tackle or right tackle over and over and over again, then they should be able, like the receivers, be able to get with the line judge and go, hey, am I good?
I think they are, but it's just not as easy as like a receiver because they're so far away and then it's sped up. But I agree. Like that's the argument is like, there's no excuse. You can check with the ref,
Well, see, I've never seen it. I've never seen a lineman do it. I've always seen them run to the spot, line up on somebody's friggin' hip and then go. But now if I'm worried about that being an issue for half a yard or two, you know what I mean? I need you to bless me before I get set that way. I'm not going to do it because you saw Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard both go, man, I don't know if this is how they're going to call this. We've got to be better. And they felt like abused in the situation where it was like, I didn't know what to do. This is where I've always lined up. It's never been an issue. Sometimes they call it, sometimes they don't. I line up in the same spot. So the way you get rid of that is just to be able to have some sort of check and then go, okay, we're good. Because I guarantee you, while they are trying to get an advantage out of the deal, it's not worth it if you're losing, like you're saying, a first down or it's an automatic 5-yard penalty. And I'm wondering how long it goes on before CJ has to go to this man and go, look, just I'll take it. You know what I mean? Whatever you got to do to not give me this penalty, to give me a shot, that means, you wait an extra second, whatever, because you really are starting to see this team as 2 totally different sides of a coin when they're playing clean versus when they're not. And it's like, I get it. You're trying to protect your foundational piece. CJ Stroud's the most important guy right now, right? I understand that. But at the same time, these drives are over before they even start because it's 2nd and 20, 3rd and 15. And it's like there's no playbook for that. For all the guys that want to go after Bobby Slowick, there's no playbook for that. It's just not done. And then when you talk about D'Amico trying to coach this out and square it up and Nick, get rid of it, I don't know if he's got it in him. And I know we've talked about his improvement and stuff like that. I just can't see him being the disciplinarian ever.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is communication, cohesiveness. Like this O-line didn't play together all as a unit together last year at all, and then they had like 2 practices or 1 practice together in training camp. So like you hate to make excuses, but they're still learning how to play together and play together and communicate well. But another thing too that's like not really being talked about is like, some blame could be like on Stroud or getting the play call in too, like getting in and out of the huddle. Like it sounds cheesy, but like there is, value in being efficient and getting in and out of the huddle and getting lined up quick, giving yourself time on the play clock to do these things. So like you mentioned, like pointing and lining up with the ref, like if we're getting the play in late and we're making checks late and you don't have time to check with the ref, like it kind of goes by the wayside. So there's a lot of things at play, and like hopefully between just cohesiveness and communication and between the operation, like, getting the play and everyone just getting, more and more reps, hopefully that naturally irons this all out. So
I would hope so. We have a question in the Instagram chat. Will we run more this week since Von Miller is out? And the reason I bring that question up is because, I don't know, seeing Von Miller is not there makes me think that maybe we'll feel safer passing the ball. Von Miller's pretty lethal as a pass rusher, I thought, but is that the wrong train of thought to take into that?
Yeah, Von Miller's a pass rush specialist. He's just on 3rd downs essentially. But
he's not like Will Anderson Jr. where he's just getting after the run, right?
No.
Well, at Texans commenter, they run a lot of 2 high safety. So if you follow this guy and if you don't, I don't know what the hell you're doing.
I don't know.
But they're going to have to run the ball this weekend. And I totally agree because they're going to dare the Texans to beat them, in the passing game. I think, or actually, I take that back. They're going to dare them to beat them on the ground versus in the passing game.
Yeah. Yep. And if Mel Kiper had his way, that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, no, so that's my key to victory on the offensive side of the ball is the run game. Really, like if you boil it down to simplest form, it's running the ball, it's stopping the run and having the run game on the other end. But we need to run the ball regardless of Von Miller, and I don't think him being out affects that. But that is, 1, their weakness on their defense, and 2, it's what we need to do they're going to, like Tom said, like the coverage they run, they have 2 high safeties majority of the time. They're going to kind of force us into that. You can't make a living when they're basically preventing deep passes, just trying to force things in there. You need to be able to run the ball to soften that up. So
sweet. Well, we're about to bring this to a close, but you brought up your keys to victory. Tom and I usually give our keys and stuff like that on our previews and recaps, but we would love to hear what your offensive and defensive keys to victory are for the Texans in this game.
Yeah, so I basically touched on it. On the defensive side of the ball, I would say priority number 1 is stopping the run. Like I mentioned, Joe Brady has simplified this offense and made it less, risky for Josh Allen by having the run game be effective. So if we can mitigate that, then we can kind of force him into some longer downs and maybe get some of the old Josh Allen where he's trying to create too much and get some turnovers. And then the second part of that is minimizing Khalil Shakir in the slot. He's super effective. A lot of it's through screens, so like tackling on him should be a priority. And he hurt his ankle in that game last week and still played, but maybe that limits him a little bit. And then, like I just mentioned, on the offensive side of the ball, it's running the ball. I'm hoping Joe Mixon is a be-all, cure-all just by showing up. I still think the O-line play needs to improve, but I'm optimistic that we can control the game on the ground offensively. So those are my 2 keys.
Sweet. Yeah, I agree. In a way, I said that. I think I simplified it a lot more with the turnover thing. I feel like getting Josh Allen to be superhero Josh Allen and turn the ball over. And then also looking at, I believe it was Texans Thoughts, Jordan Pun had posted. The Texans are like 28th in takeaways right now with 3. Last season, I felt like a big part, at least early on. Throughout the season, they were pretty middle of the league in terms of takeaways, but winning the turnover margin was a huge part of why the offense was able to be successful. I always cite the 09 Packers, I want to say, is the number where they had a pretty good defense, but one of the big reasons that they went all the way and won the Super Bowl that year was their defense's ability to force turnovers. So I think that needs to pick up a bit, regardless of who the Texans are playing.
Well, that's going to come from, like, we've all seen, like, our pressure rate is like it's been 1 all year and like second, but like a big issue for me is the same as last year is finishing the rush. Like, we get there, but we can't get the sacks. I mean, you start to convert those into sacks. Now you get strip sacks, or you force a quarterback into a errant throw. So I mean, that's another key, I guess, now that I'm thinking of it, is obviously containing Josh Allen, but getting there on the rush and not allowing him to escape and extend the play.
100%. Well, this has been Live from the Bullpen. Thank you for joining us live from the Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast. If you don't follow us, make sure you find the Bullpen wherever you do your social media stuff. And also, if you search the Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast, will pop up wherever you find your podcast at, and on YouTube. Garrett joined us a little late. Houston Stressins, Texans commenter, a man of many names. Tell everyone where they can find you. They're probably here to see you. I'm not gonna lie, but go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
At Texans commenter on pretty much everything. I got my new website, HoustonStressins.com. I am releasing a part of it, so I still have a couple things I'm releasing, but one of them is, I don't know if I've told you guys yet, but I'm building out like a content creator page where basically it's like a directory where each person can have, or each podcast and or person can have like their own bio and have all your social media handles, and then also embed your videos too. So it can be like a one-stop shop. It's kind of the same thing I'm doing on Twitter, aggregating in a sense, but now it's just like, if you want to find stuff, you just go right there. You can scroll through. I like this podcast, that podcast, all right in there. So HoustonStressins.com. Be on the lookout for that. I appreciate you guys letting me jump in like this. I missed you guys. I wish I had more time. I would join y'all weekly, but it's kind of tough to find time for all this stuff.
Well, maybe y'all will see him next week. Maybe.
We'll hey, talk to us about this merch. Talk to us about that shirt.
Oh yeah. So I got merch on the site. I got a couple designs up, but I have a lot more good designs that are coming out ASAP, kind of like the 713 shirts, stuff similar to that. So it's on the site too, in the store. I'm just trying to provide stuff for fans. I feel like, there's some good opportunities there for fans that, would appreciate some of that stuff. And if anybody has any ideas, or if y'all want to collab on a shirt, we can do something. Or if y'all have any ideas for designs, let me know. I'll whip it up.
We'll have to figure out how to get there, because I feel like our current design for the Bullpen's logo is a little rough, but I think that could be the concept of an idea for a shirt, as the former president once said. But anyway, and y'all might see Garrett on the show this week. Like I was saying at the top of the show, got a baby boy showing up this Friday, so excited for that. But that means you won't see me on the show next week. So yeah. As far as Tom and I go, you know where to find us. I'm at M1 Texans Fan on Instagram and at James Roy NFL on Twitter. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen, featuring very special surprise guest, Houston Stressins. One more time, because I said at the beginning of the episode, but I want to kind of bring it up. The locker giveaway. If you are in the locker league, you just got to play a game this weekend. If you're not, use the promo code SWARM. Get $10 off, join the locker league, and go ahead and get entered into this contest to try and get a Houston Texans jersey of your choosing. I'm not promising anything, but I know that the H-Town blue jerseys have not been available online. Locker is an affiliate of Fanatics. They might be able to get in on something a little sooner. I'm told we might be able to hold off on ordering it for the winner until the jersey that you want becomes available. And I know that in the coming weeks, we're expecting a lot of players that their jerseys aren't on there to become available. So yeah, make sure you're in there. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.